Welcome to Pink Radio with Prestige. This is the place for you, the diva boss entrepreneur who needs quick tips on building your crave-worthy brand. This is your host, Nicole Doss, CEO of the Prestige Society, a membership organization for women entrepreneurs who believe in building powerful networks while slanging in their industries. So I want you to go ahead and grab your favorite cup of coffee and get your favorite tips right here with Prestige. Hey, girl bosses. I am so excited to be back with another episode of Pink Radio with Prestige. So today's episode is all about the girl boss and your integrity. So I know it's not super sexy and it's not Instagrammable, but it's definitely a topic that we need to talk about. So I am obsessed with a podcast by the name of True Crime Obsessed. And so Jillian Passavelli and Patrick Hines are the host and hostess for this particular show. And what they do is they do commentary of crimes that have been committed by others. And so anyone who knows me personally knows that I am an ID fan. I am an Oxygen fan. I'm all about watching Snapped. My husband's very disturbed by this because he's like, what in the world are you planning? And honestly, I'm not planning anything. It's just that I find human behavior very interesting. And so, and then also too, I just like to see what happens, and then I want to teach my kids why they should be safe. So I'm always watching these really interesting crime shows and documentaries, and on top of everything else, I just love documentaries. So learning about things that are happening in this world from another lens that is not part of a propaganda engine is so my thing. So whenever there's a documentary, I'm all over it. So True Crime Obsession kind of really touches base on both of those things. Crime shows, but more like crime documentaries. So in this particular podcast episode that I was listening to, they were talking about the case of Elizabeth Holmes. So for most of you who are not aware of who Elizabeth Holmes is, I'll put it to you like this. On paper, the girl was the epiphany of a girl badass boss. She was what every female founder hoped to be. She was the epitome of the millennial female founder because she really did outwardly, on the outside, it looked like she was for creating change that can impact the world in a way that was really fighting for the greater good. And she even seemed to create this vision of fighting the greater good by going against, the big bad companies that basically exploit others, because there's only these two companies, and we'll talk about these companies later, who are providing services, so they're pricing to stay competitive with one another, and because it's just the two of them, can be quite high. So she was bringing affordable choices to the everyday person based off of a tragic story that she had growing up. And what her business was, her business was called Theranos, and so therefore Theranos was a company that basically said they created this awesome technology that would allow people to order their own blood tests at a fraction of the cost. So when you would look at their little catalog of prices, it would be $7, $8, $10, and anyone knows that when you order blood tests, it's not that cheap at all. I think I did a cell-free DNA test when I was pregnant with Taylor, because as the medical world would have liked to describe me, they decided that I was an old ass mom. That's right, they called me an advanced maternal age. So because I was old, and according to the medical world, I had to take this cell-free DNA test. So they kind of warned me hey, listen, it's going to be $2,000 for this test, but if you submit something to your insurance, maybe you'll come out only paying $200. So when you talk about these kind of tests that could cost, overall $1,000, and then once you get insurance involved, maybe it's $80 if it's covered by your insurance company. and now you're talking about prices that are like $7. That seems to be pretty impactful to those who may not have the means to be able to really be proactive in knowing things with their health and really being proactive in taking care of their health. Well, more interestingly about her technology was that she had this machine called Edison, and she had these things called nanotainers. And basically you would just give a little finger prick like of blood, take two little tiny like droplets of blood, and from that they could do over, I think in the beginning they were saying like over hundreds of tests, and then of course once the recognition and knowledge of the company widened and awareness increased about the business, then they were offering over thousands of tests. So you're probably thinking like, well, what the heck does this have to do with what I normally talk about in the Girl Boss community? So I found this really, really intriguing, and I'm going to jump straight to why I found this intriguing. Girlfriend lied. She lied about everything. Like, nothing worked. She was able to raise millions, if not billions of dollars with her business. She was, I think, a self-made billionaire at the age of 19. She had dropped out of Stanford with only like a few I think I don't know if she was a freshman or what have you, but she dropped out of Stanford, so she was known as the dropout. But she was celebrated everywhere. She was celebrated in the New York Times. She was celebrated in Fortune. She was celebrated in the Wall Street Journal. She was celebrated with like Forbes 30 under 30. She was celebrated everywhere. And when you look at even who she surrounded herself with, she decided to surround herself with very powerful people. So the GOP was behind her. She had people who were also now remember, she went to school to be an engineer, but she literally was starting this biotech medical kind of industry company. And so she had people who were like, not in the army, because that sounds really stupid and like I don't know what I'm talking about, but they were like generals and people who were like really, really, really high up in the government on her board. So when people began to hear who was behind her, more and more people began to trust this business. She had the Walton family, who's the family behind Walmart, invest money in her. She had Rupert Murdoch, who is, I think when I looked him up, his net worth was $20.1 billion. I've always heard of Rupert Murdoch in the same vein as Warren Buffett. So, really, like, you have a mixture of really high political figures, powerful political figures, government figures, and then financial figures that are either on your board or working as individuals in your company. It's a very impressive roster of people to support this company. And she was able, I think the thing that got me about the lying was how far the lying went. So she would dress in the same garb as Steve Jobs. Steve Jobs was who she was completely taken by. Like, she admired everything about this man. So where he would always wear black turtlenecks, she would always wear, literally had like a crazy amount of black turtlenecks. And she always, and her thing was, well, I'm not like Steve Jobs because like he wore jeans and I wear suits. So she would wear all black suits. But she also looked a little crazy to me because literally it would seem like she would never blink. She had big blue eyes and she never seemed to blink ever. And she had this very distinct and rare voice that seemed to be this really, really considerably low voice, and she would talk really, really slow. And what was so odd about this, because people were like, is this a persona that you're putting on? And she was like, no, like I wore black turtlenecks since I was, a little girl. But then when you look at pictures of herself when she was a little girl, she did not wear black turtlenecks. But what was really interesting as well is that there were more claims that even down to her voice, the tone of her voice, all of that was not who she was as a girl growing up. She actually had a rather high-pitched nasally voice. And so it intrigued me because, like I said, in the beginning of this episode, is that, human behavior and how people choose to show up in the world, especially when they're building a brand, a brand that has the ability to solve a serious problem for others, when they decide to go down that road but then completely exploit this thing, I find it interesting to see what drives that person. And I began to think about the girl boss. So here's the thing. Most of the listeners that listen to this are black and brown. So for those of you who are not black and brown, you're probably thinking, oh, well, what does that mean? African American or Latina descent, okay? Or Asian, meaning Indian. So when I think of for the most part, the black or the African American founder, when I think of the Latina founder, I do not think of us in a space where we are in the realms of being able to speak with VCs, or we sit with VCs, or we have the same I would say, circle of people that we would have access to. I do not believe that if I walked into the room I do not believe that I would be able to have the ability to get a Stanford professor to leave his job and to come work for me. I think that wearing the skin of an African American woman and being an African American woman means that I have to prove myself, not 10 times, not 100 times, but 1,000 times over, in order for people to say, you know what, that Nicole, she's a pretty sharp cookie. Let's see what she's going to do. And even then, there would have to be this consistent way of like really proving that what I'm doing is worthy, or is valuable, or is legitimate. But I'm sorry, but Caucasian, blue eyes, blonde hair, and you may look like, this girl may look like their daughters, or there may be some like lust behind the scenes. She's so not a lusty kind of gal. Like, she really, really is like your like weird kind of, she just seems like a weird, beautiful chaos kind of thing. So if you didn't know that she was a liar, if you didn't know that she was a manipulator, you really would be taken by the weirdness of her, because you would think that you were really in the presence of a phenomenal genius young woman who had the passion and or the compassion to help others. And so it just seemed to be very easy for her to align herself with really powerful men. I mean, you see Bill Clinton, who's like speaking about her and so excited that she was only 19 years old when she started her company. You see Joe Biden coming to the plant to see what the business can be doing. So this girl had like major connections. And like I said, when I think about black and brown female founders, I do not believe that unless we are like causing or figuring out the cure for cancer or AIDS, I do not feel that we would have gotten the same type of, recognition, or even gotten as far in the lie as she did. But it still made me think about at what lengths do women entrepreneurs, regardless of their ethnicity, and maybe it's not to this level of this high power people, but at what level do you feel pressured to lie about what you do? At what level do you feel the pressure to show up in a way, whether it's because you want to be deemed successful, whether it's because you want to be seen as valid? I mean, when I really look at this woman and I think about how deep she went in really creating this persona, I want you to think about two things. One, the girl was in Silicon Valley. So if you've ever read any articles at all about how women are treated in Silicon Valley, you would be completely blown away. My many travels, I'm always grabbing newspapers. And because I've worked not so much as an IT person, but I've always like had some type of impact in the IT vein. So when I worked for a water company, I worked in IT, but that's because I managed technical trainers. And then, when I work for the company I work for now, we are parallel to IT because we help with implementation. So we are called implementations team. So, and what we do is we help with just that, technical training. So when I think of things that I see that are around IT, I get really interested in the technical space and how women are treated. And I've heard comments before about women's movement for Caucasian women is not the same as the women's movement for All right, so we got it. The article really, really did intrigue me. So I pick up this article and it talks about what women, both of color as well as, I'm sorry, so got interrupted. So let me just go back. So you always hear that they say the women's movement is not the same for all women. So women who are of mainstream, I would say, Caucasian women usually have a different kind of movement than impacts women who are minorities. But in Silicon Valley, it's kind of like all women are treated like crap. Now, of course, we see far less representation when it comes to minority women. But what you don't see is that, like, white women are treated great and women who are minorities are treated like crap. No, what you see is all women are treated like crap. So in this one particular article, it was stating that this one woman was coming to just interview someone. And this guy was just like, yeah, I'm here to be interviewed. And he was basically like, just kind of discounting her and didn't realize that she was the hiring manager, and then almost like discounted her like she wasn't a real programmer because she was a woman. And so that should just kind of give you just a little bit of insight of like what the culture is, or what I perceive it to be based off of what I've read. I've never been to Silicon Valley, so please don't take this as like I know because I've been there. But just from what I've read, this is what I perceive it to be like. So when I think about this culture of founders, technical startup founders, and then adding that layer of being a female to the mix, I asked myself, one, what is the trigger to say I'm going, like, in order for me to make it, I have to show up as this person. And so, because you think this person like created an entire cloak, like a persona, from attire that she wore to her voice to even her appearance. Like there was really a well thought out plan of coming up and being this person who just isn't real or authentic. And then at what point do you just say this has gone too far? So when I start thinking about this in the realms of like your everyday girl boss who is starting her own company, I began to think about what we do on social media, how we show up anywhere to relay a story, to be able to bait people in order for them to buy into our brand. And that hurts my heart that people will do that, because I'm going to tell you something. I do believe that certain founders, male and female alike, do believe that if you create this persona, then you kind of like just fake it till you make it. But here's the thing about faking it till you make it. Number one, I love this one thing that my old director told me, and it was that your skills will take you where your character cannot keep you. Meaning, like, if you have these certain kind of skills and you lie to get somewhere, at some point that characteristic that you had to lie to get to where you are, it can't keep you in that space. And that's kind of what happened with Elizabeth Holmes. I mean, at some point, I mean, when I tell you, it went far. I mean, so far it was crazy. Like, she was in 80 different stores in Walgreens in the Arizona area, or in the Arizona market. She completely like hired the same marketing agency that did the marketing for Mac, I think it was like their 1984, like the big huge one that they did, where it was like, think different, and there was a woman running, and it was like, she threw something at it, and it was like showing that they were breaking through with something different, and everything now was in color. So she wanted to make that same kind of launch campaign as well. And remember, Steve Jobs is like her idol, so of course she's going to use the same marketing company that he had used at the time. And when you think about it, it's like she sold to Walgreens not only lies, but to clients, to patients. So patients were using their tests to be able to make some really serious medical decisions. And thank God for some of these people who just didn't trust it and went and got other tests done by either LabCorp or by Quest Diagnostics, because this way they were able to get real reliable results. And unfortunately, what ended up happening is that this girl has to do jail time. She had to pay like I think it's sad she only had to pay like a $500,000 fine. And then also Walgreens sued her for lying to them about what it was that she was actually doing. So I really feel like one thing that everyone should know is that you cannot maintain an entire life built on a lie. And you have to be comfortable enough where you are in your journey of entrepreneurship to really take wise counsel, to really know how to stand with that longevity of who you are. So, for instance, for me, when I first decided to start the Prestige Society, I was working with a coach by the name of Adriana Langford, and she asked me a real question, and I thank her for this. And she said, because I was still working for American Water at the time, and she knew I was working at the time towards making my first leap out of corporate America, and she said, Nicole, how do you feel knowing that you're going to coach entrepreneurs when you haven't taken the leap? Like, tell me what your answer is to that, so that we know you're prepared if anyone asks you. And I remember like it was yesterday, and I said, oh, absolutely, I don't feel bad about it. And she said, great. She's like, I want to make sure you don't. So tell me why. And I said, because my entire career has been around helping organizations move forward. And there's things that I've seen in my career that has allowed me to build the programs that I've built for women entrepreneurs, that if I just did this like trial by error trying to figure out by myself, I wouldn't do them any real service. But the fact that these are things that I've experienced while supporting either, government agencies, the financial industry, whether it was for profit, whether it was real estate, I had a slew of positions, in my career, all working in different industries. I never worked in the same industry twice. So having that type of a career and being able to pass that on to women entrepreneurs, for me, I think is absolutely amazing. And so I don't think me having a 9-to-5 is actually bad. I think it's something that is beneficial. So she was just like, that's awesome. Like, and you stick to that. And even to today, it's so funny because some people will equate having a 9-to-5 and doing what I do as like, you're not being authentic. Well, pump your brakes. Like, if I wasn't being authentic, I would never tell you that I had a 9-to-5. But it's not my fault that you equate success by someone just being an entrepreneur solely. I mean, you could make $10,000 a year and be an entrepreneur. And I don't know about you, but that's not going to do anything for my family. That's not going to do anything for my daughter who needs to go to college. That's not going to do anything when I'm helping, like my husband in his entrepreneurial, space. So for me, I don't know. I just feel like I own my truth and I own what success means to me. And I don't want to have to succumb to someone else's definition. And if they feel that who I am isn't the right fit for them, I think the beauty of what I do is that I'm not the only one out here. And so you can find someone who can that you feel that you resonate with. And you find that person and you work with them and you make the incredible happen. And then you keep on moving. Because while I am not for someone, there's someone else who feels that I am the perfect fit for them. So for me, there's not and I can't say there's not always this feeling of such confidence, because I've had people kind of like ask me questions that made me feel like they were challenging my legitimacy. They were really like, because they wanted to know, like, well, you don't make $1 million, so like, are you legitimate? And it's almost laughable, because you're just like, to me, that doesn't define success. And if I made $1 million, you wouldn't even have the kind of access to me that you have now. But a lot of people have that definition of success, and that's okay, and that's for them. So when I look at things like Instagram and I look at things like, what people put out there, the programs they put out there, how many people try to get rich off of one person's back just to say that they've made it, it really got me to think about how many girl bosses, boy bosses are out here lying because they want to seem more successful. And so I just did a Google search. Why do founders lie? Please do this Google search. You would be absolutely in shock at how many articles are out there about why investors lie to founders, why founders lie to investors. And the reality is that there's something in the water that's making us feel like we have to show up more than what we are. And so today's episode is all about the 3 tips that I want you guys to take home with you today about the importance of you being absolutely transparent, true, and genuine in who you are, living in the entrepreneur, the purposepreneur that you are, and being unapologetic about it. All right, so let's jump to the first thing. The first thing is tap into your purpose and understand that it must be genuine. It must be genuine. So what do I mean about tap into your purpose? Well, I think one of the things that we normally do is we are caught in this world of finding out that or feeling as though money is the precursor or the determining factor of are we successful. And honestly, for anyone who has made money, there's never enough. You know, if you make 6 figures, you're probably wondering when you're going to make 150,000. If you ever make 150,000, you're probably going to think, well, when am I going to make 200,000? We are human beings and we always want more. So it's really important for you to tap into your purpose so that you can understand why are you really doing what it is that you're doing with your business. Because it has to be so much bigger than just this vain, egocentric desire to just make money. Now, does that mean that you aren't smart about it and that you don't create multiple streams of your income? That's not at all what I'm saying. Definitely be smart. Definitely be a smart financial steward for your company. Definitely create those additional streams, because when you do that and you're generating that wealth, you do have an ability to create generational wealth for your family in ways that the Black and brown families do not discuss. And so, you know, I think that yes, you do that, but allow purpose to be the main reason why and the main drive into what you're doing, instead of allowing that bag or whatever that, you know, the money, your coins, to be the main driver. The second thing I want you to do when you tap into your purpose is I want you to have gratitude for where you are now. And the reason why you need gratitude for where you are at all times is because you need to understand that in every phase of where you are with your business, you were there for a reason. In every phase of where you're going in your entrepreneurial journey, you're there for a reason. In every phase of financial, whatever it is in that journey, where you are, you're there for a reason. The ups, the downs, the great times, the bad times, you are there for a reason. And it's not like, you know, I always say in life, I don't want to be at the finish line yet, because then what is left for God to do with me? And so for me, I instead try to find this sense of gratitude of where I am now. And I try to awaken my senses so that I am forever a student of life, that I am forever trying to figure out what is the lesson that I'm supposed to learn now. And if I'm constantly focused on where I am not, if I'm constantly focused on the finish line, if I'm constantly focused on everything else but my now, my present, then what ends up happening is I will miss all of the lessons because I'm too busy focused on everything else but what is right in front of me. And there is a reason God has me where I am right at this moment. So definitely make sure that you have gratitude for the present, gratitude for where you are at this moment. So the first one is tapping into your purpose and making sure you're absolutely genuine in that, as well as showing gratitude for where you are right now. And lastly, just do it. I know that sounds cheesy. Oh my gosh, do not kill me, but just do it. Like, there's things that you need to do and to execute, and you need to experiment with, and you need to do a little bit of trial and error, and all of it needs to be in alignment with your purpose. You're going to be constantly trying to find discernment and direction in every step that you take. So if you're in this space of really honoring whatever season you're in, if you're in this space where you're really trying to honor and learn what it is that God has in front of you now, if you're in this space where you're like, okay, you know, focus on my purpose and taking you out of it, all the vain, egocentric things out of it, then what's happening is that you're in this space of really being focused on what you're called to do. You are in this space where you are focused on what you are called to do, not what it seems like, not what it looks like, not what it should be, not if you're accepted, not if it's Instagrammable, not if it's cool, not if you have more followers, not if people like you, not if you're considered an influencer, but you're focused on, are you making a real impact? Because you are doing this because everything you're doing is aligned to your purpose. So with that, I'm going to go ahead and sign on off. I hope that you found the story of Elizabeth Holmes a little interesting and really begin to think about how you may even at times feel pressured to show up so much differently than who you really are. And I hope you then shake that off and realizing that really being transparent and being genuine is what builds brand over time. That it builds that brand trust. It really builds the longevity of your brand. And those are the things that are important as you continue to help with the advocacy of those with whom you choose to serve. So with that, I'm going to sign off. I hope you guys have an awesome and wonderful day. Remember the 3 tips. You're going to do what? That's right. Tap into your purpose, give gratitude, and just do the darn thing. All right, guys, be blessed. Bye.